I gotta run downstairs real quick. Give me 1 second, Nova.
All right.
Right now.
What up, Mato? Case. Okay. Well, yeah.
Woo! Peace. Peace. Peace, Maso.
Peace.
How everybody doing? No, but Malik, you know you the host, right? I mean, can you? We're gonna start off with the document about Wall Street, and then the second one about the antebellum slavery and banking. We'll do that one last, and we'll only read 5 pages. And that's the beauty of being students. Y'all have a document, y'all can read it all. But I'm gonna narrate it, okay?
What you want me to pull up?
The first document we got 2 we're gonna go over, but the one we're gonna go over first is the one that's pertaining with Wall Street.
Okay, you talking about the one you gotta go online and get. The other one's a book, a PDF book.
I sent them both to your email.
Yeah, I got them. I pulled them already up already. I'm already ready to go.
Oh, okay. Most definitely, Noble.
Yeah.
Peace, Noble Alonzo.
Peace.
Man, you the man. That's all I gotta say. That's all I gotta say. Hey, man, I'm trying to do something special too, man. I'm working on it when we have our event. I'm working on us doing a little fashion, model some of our stuff real fast just to take pictures. So I'm gonna probably have, a couple outfits of all of our stuff we have, and all of us can just throw some stuff on and just take a little runway real fast. You know what I mean? Yeah. I got some stuff bubbling, man. All our necklaces is almost done, so I'm just trying to do things, man, to make us synchronize and just show the love. So whenever you're ready, Noble Malik, and we'll do our Moorish American prayer. Just let us know when you're ready. Then we'll do our prayer, and we'll get started.
You want the one under Wall Street lies a legacy of slavery, high times before a tour, right?
Absolutely. As Bailey saying.
Okay, we can say Moorish American prayer. I got ready to go.
Okay, let's do it.
Allah, Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation. By night and by day, through his holy prophet, Drew Ali. Amen. Aya Asha'ayah. Shalom Alakim. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Al-Haq Yahu Amin. Islam, Adonai. Big. Peace.
Peace. First, I want to say gratitude to all the nobles, man, for us committing to Allah and committing to ourselves and doing things the right way. It's easy to do things wrong. It's easy to do things wrong, but it's an honor to do things the right way, you know?
Can y'all see that? Yeah.
All right. So, I know a lot of people talk about New York and talk about a lot of current events, but with no substance. So we're going to talk about some things with some substance and really get an understanding of, how can I say, my dad used to say, when you want to know anything, you follow the money, per se, right?
Right.
And when we talk about money, reparations or restorations and any of these things, we know, where do most of us keep our money? In banks, right?
Right.
In institutions, right?
Correct.
Islam, Solomon?
Islam.
Okay. So if that's the fact, we talk about New York, but have y'all ever know what's under New York or what happened before Wall Street? Have you ever heard of that, y'all? Okay, well, we're going to talk a little bit about it historically, and this stuff is for children. See, man, when children write about this type of history, it blows these teachers' minds because they know. And that's when I show more, when you get out of begging and you get to understanding what this all based on, and you start having real conversations on these topics, for you can make a difference in what you do with your finances. Building, seeing how the world was built off the backs of, how can I say it, y'all? Indentured service, or what they like to call slavery. That's how the world was built. And when you have an understanding on things, you remove the anger and you start navigating, man, like you on the sea, Solomon. You got your compass on your square and you say, yeah, we know it's some shit out there, but we navigating. We have a clear understanding. So we navigate. So in 2009, the Netherlands, they celebrated the end of slavery in the Caribbean with an annual day of remembrance. Don't nobody even talk about this. My Caribbean brothers, I said, y'all don't talk about this, but we rarely hear about the slaves the Dutch kept in the colony that would become New York. From this day you never need enough, you never need enough, and telling you New York. Come on, man. See, we be celebrating things, but we got to know the historicalness of it. To be like, yes, we understand the pageantry, but this was built off the backs of who? That's why I keep telling people, they want to say, oh, this. Yeah, you deserve everything. When you understand the right way, when you do it the right way, when you operate in proudness and boldness. Watch this. I walked around the city to see if I could find traces of this buried past. Under Wall Street lies a legacy of slavery. Y'all want to read it? Somebody narrate. Y'all want me started off?
The Dutch are pretty proud of founding New York in 2009.
Mm-hmm.
The Netherlands and New York celebrate their 400-year history with Madrid.
With the Myrick. Now, no, you see what I said? It said Netherlands and New York. You know what's in the Netherlands, right?
Us.
Swarty Pyatt, Black Pete Pyatt, a.k.a. that Corsica flag. That's the Netherlands.
Festivals and parties. Wherever possible, organizers emphasize shared values like freedom, tolerance, and equal opportunity. The values the Netherlands and is often given credit for coming up within or with. Sorry, but the story has a dark side that often overlooked in the colony called New Amsterdam. The Dutch keep slaves from day one.
Now you see,
Yeah, sorry.
I hope y'all following this. We ain't talking about no goddamn Africa, no this. We talking. I hope y'all listening.
This is the Dutch. The Dutch. Also, let me just touch on a point. I said this before. In the movie Hoodlums.
Come on.
Who was the coldest dude that they had to get rid of because he wouldn't follow protocol?
Dutch Schultz.
Exactly. So them was the coldest people, and in the book they were white and they were slaves. They talked about the people who were coming over for servitude. The warning to people who wanted to come over here to the Americas is don't mess with the Dutch people because they are basically ruthless.
Islam, that's like what Noble put in Women in the Nation. And one of the clock of destiny as well. The English Dutchman. He is Dutch man. Islam.
Yeah. In fact, it's a fact that merits remembering. Each January 1st,
July
1st,
yep.
The Netherlands celebrate Keti Kati. I don't know, what does that mean? Anybody know?
Yep. Finish reading, it's gonna tell you.
It says a day honoring an abolition of slavery in the former Caribbean colonies. Did anybody understand what this is?
So like a celebration, like they want to celebrate as far as abolition goes back to the end of slavery.
Right here.
Right here.
What it said right here.
Yeah, right here. But what about slavery here in New York City? Join me on a tour of modern day New York as I look for traces of cities buried past.
Scroll down. Y'all ready? Wait. Come on, look at this. Look at the map. Look at New York. Manhattan, Greenwich Village, Ministry, African Burial Ground, former Slick Stick. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Come on, Noble. Page down, Noble. Gratitude for showing that pictorial. But wait, there was slavery in New Netherlands. New Netherlands is New York. It's true that slavery was banned within the borders of the Dutch Republic, but it was common practice from the beginning at the trading post of New Amsterdam. The trading post of New Amsterdam. What you think they was trading at the trading post? Oh, we ain't done yet, because the next part gonna be even deeper. Come on, Noble. Controlled by the Dutch from 1624 to 1664. A year after the Dutch West India Company established the settlement in 1625, 11 male African slaves, likely from Angola and the Congo, were captured from either a Spanish or Portuguese ship and brought ashore here.
And who were the original Spanish and Portuguese?
Come on, man. The Moors ruled Spain. Who you think the Moors were? Who you think the Jews were? Come on, this shit is simple, but we want to argue. Back in the Netherlands, few people were interested in going to the new colony with its harsh conditions to make the land habitable and set up a trading post. So who was going to build the planned fort, the market, the houses, the churches, the hospitals, the schools? Colonizers came to New Netherlands from England, France, what is now Belgium. Just like when the second president of Egypt said the reason why Jerusalem is cursed because God's people left black and came back white. No, I'm telling you, they Russian, Belgium, all those areas, Europe, No disrespect to no one. My professors, I had European Jewish professors. We know this. This is scholarship. This is no hate. Ireland, Germany, and other countries, but they were too few in number. So the captured slaves and soon others were put to work cutting down trees, clearing land, building houses, and laying roads. See, when y'all talk about the Homestead Act and that Head Start Act, when they gave, no disrespect to Europeans, not only land but tools to till the land, all that shit. Look at it. They always got a head start. It's no disrespect, just like the doctrine of discovery. New Amsterdam slaves played a key part in constructing the city wall along present-day Wall Street. Female slaves brought the colony a few years later, worked mainly in private households. The ranks of enslaved people continued to swell. By around 1630, there were 100 slaves living in New Amsterdam, making up a third of the population. In 1664, the arrival of 290 Angolan slaves doubled their numbers. At that point, a quarter of New Amsterdam were slaves. See, they ain't telling you this. In recent years, New York City had made more of an effort to acknowledge this aspect of its past. In the summer of 2015, Mayor Bill de Blasio unveiled a plaque on Wall Street commemorating the slave market that once operated there. I hope nobody talked about this. All our so-called black historians, they don't want to talk about this because they know. They want to keep you with that back to Africa shit. Excuse my candor. The Netherlands, however, isn't mentioned. So it's time to dig deeper. What can the remnants of New Netherlands history of slavery tell us about our colonial past? Somebody want to say something?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So now we're going to go on a little bit of the tour. I ain't going to read it all because people should be students. When you're a student, you get the information from the map and the guide. It's just how it go. And we guide each other to righteousness. Stop 1 on the tour, the African burial ground, final resting place, 4,000s. We begin at the African burial ground, National Monument, in the heart of the financial district, on the corner of Dane and Elk, tucked behind the 34-story Ted Weiss Federal Building. Y'all know where that's at. A large granite monument stands in the middle of a tidy lawn, a TD lawn. Page down a little bit for me, Noble. Excuse me. The memorial pays homage to the 15,000, 20,000 slaves and free black New Yorkers buried in the 17th and 18th centuries in the area bounded today by Dane Street, Chamber Street, Lafayette Street, and Broadway, a cemetery 22 times the size of the lawn I'm standing on. Come on, man. It's there. African burial. According to historians, the English founded the Negro burial ground, as it's called on historical maps. Look at it. In 1690, they did so because free black New Yorkers and slaves weren't allowed to bury their dead in the city's main cemetery. But the English got the land from a Dutch colonist, Sarah Wolfs. She received it as a thank you gift from Peter Stuyvesant, the Director General of New Netherlands, for serving as an interpreter in negotiation with local Indian tribes. I'm telling you, it's all in other books. I'll show y'all, page down.
So when you talk about the 1690s, so this is what we were dealing with last week. This is pre-antebellum, or this is antebellum.
Come on, no.
America, right? So this is prior to the Civil War. Even though this was up north,
Mm-hmm.
this is when they talk about burial. They're not only talking about for slaves. They're talking about for free blacks as well.
Yep. Until recently, the African burial ground existed was known only to specialist historians. So when people be saying this hid, I say, dude, man, I ain't nothing hid. It's only a common person won't know this. When people say, well, you got to be initiated if you want to be into the know. If you're a scholar, just like if you want to study martial arts or Wing Chun or anything, your training, you become initiated. When you go through the ranks, that's a form of initiation. That just like in academia, just like in athletics, you might start off on JV, go to varsity, get a college degree, then go pro. Just like if you, in your studies, you might start off going to community college and say, hey man, boom, go get your bachelor's degree, get your master's degree, get your doctorate. If that's the things that you want to do. Islam?
Islam.
Hell. It wasn't until the builders broke ground on the Ted Weiss Federal Building in 1991, and uncovered hundreds of graves that the New Yorkers and the rest of the country began to hear about. We ain't talk about this. All our so-called scholars in New York talk that slavery stuff, but you live in New York. The discovery made it clear that slavery hadn't been confined to the southern states, but had been entrenched all over the United States, even in liberal cities like New York. It also showed that enslavement occurred on a large scale, existed from the beginning, and was facilitated by the Dutch. Page down. I'm gonna show y'all another lecture I'm gonna do when they had these some of the worst fucking jails and prisons under the shit. Nobody don't even know about. They might still have prisoners to shit up in that motherfucker. Excuse my candor. Real talk. A sign at the site contains a single reference to slavery Dutch origins in New York, stating that Africans were brought to the Dutch colony of New Amsterdam from various regions with different cultures, religions, languages. A small museum in the Federal Building has displays on the New York slave holding post and the discovery of the burial grounds and a few details on slavery in New Amsterdam. I'm telling you, Wall Street, how all these people got this money is off slavery. And I'm gonna show you the next part. The banks, they did the things too. They ain't want that land. They said, we want your flesh. Greenwich Village, home to numerous slaves. Our search for remnants of New York's Dutch slave holding posts continues in Greenwich Village, a community one-half free slaves of the West India Company. I hope y'all know what the West India Company consists of. Research this shit. You'll be like, wait a minute. Then when I start telling y'all about Kentucky, the banks in Kentucky, you'll be like, wait a minute. The company made their homes here from 1644. Little was known about where slaves lived before the introduction of half freedom. Various sources say one group occupied a house on Slicktick, Mud Lane, near the modern day intersection of Broad and Pearl Street. Excuse me.
The half free.
Yeah.
Were basically supposed to have, a certain amount of years of servitude.
Yep.
That was the agreement. And then when they came over here, they became basically slaves. I'm talking about what they called the modern white people. Because they were supposed to have a certain amount of time of servitude, which is the book that you went over with the video with the guy who pointed out what all people look like came over here on that was the manifest that they used, what do you call it, UCC manifest that they used to come over here. Those are in servitude to fill a debt. And once the debt's paid off after 7 years, they're supposed to be free. That's why they call them half free.
Come on, Noble. And that's why I said we don't argue, we study. It's nothing to argue about. Islam, Malik, for that detail. Slaves had different rights and freedoms in New Amsterdam than they did later under British rule. In the Dutch era, they could marry partners of their choosing, take on paid work in their spare time, sue white colonists, and testify against them in court. Slave children could be baptized until 1655. Slaves were also able to earn their freedom. You said something, Noble?
Yeah, because it says in the Dutch era.
Yep.
There's an error for this. It means when the Dutch start saying, I want to consider action.
Come on. And when people talk about, we fighting for your freedom, man, no, you ain't. That's two brothers, red and blue, fighting for slaves. Man, miss me with that shit. I'm free. What you talk about? Unless I'm some Negro slave. In 1644, 11 slaves presented West India Company Director William Kieft with a petition demanding an end to their bondage. They and their wives were ultimately granted half freedom. Unlike white colonists, they had to pay an annual tribute to the company, but in return, they and their families were allotted plots of land where they could live independently, cultivate crops, and keep what they grew. Wow. They also weren't required to labor in other colonies. They did, however, have to work for the company on demand, and their children were its property. So shit, what you saying? If I gotta work for you on demand, you can demand me work every goddamn day for your ass. Excuse my candor. What you talking about? That's why I be saying read the clauses, read the double talk. When people be saying, this, I said, man, shut up. You ain't even read the language. They just hangman your ass. They said, you ain't gotta work for us. You got your rights to do this, but you do gotta work for us on demand. Okay. We laugh. Ha ha ha.
That was the agreement of servitude.
Yeah, goof.
Terminology.
Their farms were located in present-day Greenwich Village. By 1664, about 30 free and half-free black landowners and their families were living there. Today, the village bears few signs of their presence. So here it is today in New York. You don't got no signs of presence of all that land occupied by misnomer NBCs. The most visible is Crooked Minetta Street or Minetta Street, 2 blocks from Washington Square Park. Its being follows the course of an eponymous Lost Creek that ran past the slave farms. Southeast of Greenwich Village lies another district linked to the Dutch slaveholding, the Bowery. It was once the farm of New Netherlands Director General Peter Stuyvesant, who governed New Amsterdam from 1645 to 1644. His land stretched roughly from where East 3rd Street is today to page up for me, Noble. To East 3rd Street is today. Mark's Church in the Bowery, where Stuyvesant lies buried. After the West India Company itself, he was New Amsterdam's biggest holder of slaves. He had 10. Page down. I'm telling y'all, man. Right here, Harlem African Burial Ground, bearing no trace of its past. All in New York. We moved to Harlem African Burial Ground, where free black New Yorkers and slaves were laid to rest until the 1850s. Today, the old 126th Street bus depot is all that marks the spot. The cemetery belonged to the Low Dutch Church of Harlem. Research it. Built by colonists in 1660. The first archaeological dig began in the summer of 2015. Under the depot's concrete floor, researchers found 140 bones and fragments and 1 intact skull, likely that of a woman of African descent. The remains prove that African Americans made up part of the Harlem community from the beginning. Until recently, their presence in early years and their part they played in the colonial community were hardly acknowledged. The influx of African Americans into Harlem in the early 20th century is usually considered the beginning of the black influence in the neighborhood. But clearly, we're showing you that that's bullshit, excuse my candor. And I said this in campus. I said this in the college campus. I said this bullshit in front when I was doing my oral dissertation. Man, a lot of them students that were getting them African-American degrees, they was in there crying. Like, why you ain't teaching us? I said, shit, I'm in here proving that this pseudo. I'm standing strong, which y'all should be doing and graduating with honors, not turning your back on it, I'm proving myself right. That's what I went to this college for. Like, wait a minute, y'all. Stop letting these people tell you this shit. This shit sitting on the college shelf, collecting fucking dust. Missing me with that is hidden. This ain't hidden. This scholarship. This academia. I don't know what nobody be talking about. Something hidden. Yeah, you just ain't initiated. That's all, Noble.
So they saying that the schools you go to, why they hide them from us in that context.
And I say that's bullshit because see, it takes a person that almost say you got to be looking for God within, and if you're looking for God within, it'll take you there. This stuff been on the college campus longer than me. Okay, so why they writing about the old scholars, all them old books? What I'm saying, it takes groups, it takes a remnant of people to do this. It was groups of people doing things. The churches, the so-called black churches, that's all we own, like Dick Gregory was saying. He was like, a person like myself, like Dick Gregory was saying, should be able to make it in his community. He shouldn't have to go lecture to Europeans. He said all the misnomer Negroes should be putting their pennies together to make this person right so they can take care of the community. That's the mission. That's the mission. He said, because nothing hidden is nothing new under the sun. Right, Nobles? So when you walk around, oh, somebody said something?
No, it's Islam.
But the only sign is a piece of cardboard held by a man who's begging for passing drivers. But you know, you see the bums out there begging. But go down a little bit because I'm going to go to the next part. We're just going to jump around. So what about the Netherlands? Will the Dutch be setting up a museum or a memorial site like those at the African Burial Ground anytime soon? This discussion around what should be done with Manhattan in the 90s were echoed in the Netherlands by the calls for more official acknowledgement of slavery. In 1993, 130 years after slavery ended in Suriname and the Netherlands, Antilles, activities founded the Amsterdam Center for July 30th, July 1st, Stitching Amsterdam Centrum 30 June 1, July. The organization pushed to get Kidi Kadi broken chains. That's what it means to release the chains, Noble Malik, when he was asking what it means. Named a National Day of Remembrance, now observed each year on July 1st. So when people be saying, the fourth, they don't be knowing nothing. When we talked about what the 4th of July really meant, a cosmic event. We be letting people get us with spookism because the wisdom is miscued. It's a tittle. In 2002, after the pressure and campaigning by groups like the National Institute for the Study of Dutch Slavery, a national monument was unveiled in Amsterdam's Oosterpark. Research this stuff, y'all. And a year later, a museum and research institute designed to raise historical awareness, the National Institute for the Study of Dutch Slavery and its Legacy, the NISI, opened near the monument. In 2006, slavery was added to the canon of Dutch history, a guideline list of topics taught in schools in the Netherlands. That's why I be telling y'all, man, I know we might be looking at YouTube and all this stuff, and we be seeing all these, no disrespect, because I only see Europeans, and they come up with their little charter schools, and all our kids go there, and they make up a little handshake, and everybody be geeky. Ooh, we can go to the barbecue, right? Come on, right? Yeah. Okay, so we support that, like, ooh, that's dope, and all our kids go there. But why don't we support that? And like I tell people, man, I teach other people children. Man, the churches is the only thing we own. The temple, our spirituality is the only thing we own. Our educators like myself and others, man, I feel it's my duty that I got that education and that academia that not only the professors have, the average man don't have, and come back and teach my people. That's what we should want when we say we anointed and consecrated. To come back and teach our kids and teach our brothers and sisters and guide them. That's what this is about. Not, I got some education. That shit don't mean nothing. We correcting the teachings. So go up a little bit, Noble. I want to go to the next topic. Okay, so let's end that one. Let's go to the next one. And we out of here. Let's go to the one about the, and this is from a professor. You get the you got it, Isaac? And this one is from a professor. Her book ain't out yet. I think it come out in, what's that called? Oh, yeah. And I sent that to y'all too. Isa was pulling up something. She got some that New Amsterdam. I sent that to y'all too, some more information about the Lenape people, all that stuff. When you be like, wait a minute, it connects. Like you'll be seeing all type of connection. It connects. And you will start seeing the same language. When I said, man, you were all over. I show people this all over. The Tasmanian was kicked out of their area. A lot of Moors was sent to Nova Scotia, some to Canada. It's a lot of historical facts that we don't know. And we argue over things trying to say, I can look at a person and tell their nationality or their essence. I'm not getting to that because Noble Malik just was in, where he was at, Noble? Cancun. And I tell y'all, I'm gonna try to schedule for us to go to Cancun whenever we can. I'm gonna talk to this little travel group I've been dealing with. We got some great deals, and by me being academia and being, chic and all this and teacher, we can get things done under different type of taxes. But make a long story short, man, that goddamn old museum over there, that video I showed y'all. Did y'all see that video? That's where Malik was at. That's not far where he was at in Cancun. Yeah. And so what I'm saying is when they send us, when we go on trips, Noble Alonzo, and we go to these places, the damn trip people don't ever tell you about those things, do they? No. I'm telling you, I know they don't, because I know people, but when you academia, because we were going to our school, I told y'all, we went to the Grand Canyon with all the goddamn Egyptian monuments and shit in there, and the goddamn the special, what they call them, special police, the highest, the SEAL. The Navy SEAL? Like they be having like special train SEALs and all type of special police and the Grand Canyon for people can't go in there. I did a whole dissertation, man, years ago. They found all type of little Egyptian monuments and shit right there in the Grand Canyon, man.
There's I was talking to a lady. She said she lived in Arizona, and there was I forget the name of the place, but where they have still right now. There's on the side of like the mountain. There's like a village on the side of the mountain.
Yep, I'm gonna show you. I think I sent y'all the newspaper clipping. I'm gonna find it in my file. I'm gonna send y'all a newspaper clipping. It was from like it's crazy, huh?
You talking about when the Smithsonian tried to hide it in 1903? Shit to this day.
Okay. Yep. My professor was like, oh, and then we end up writing, and they end up letting like everybody that was graduating, as with an A average, whatever, they let us go. I got pictures and everything. I got real pictures. But like in the Cancun, at that museum, man, it's amazing. And when you go in there, you would be like, oh, those are the hieroglyphics, the Egyptian hieroglyphics. No, they not. It looked like that. That's what I be telling people. I don't care if you call yourself this and that and the other. Well, you can say, well, we all look alike. And so if that's the fact, I'm not finna argue with technicalities. I'm okay with you saying who you are. I'm just gonna deal with my history. Yeah, man. I don't be getting into that. People be like, oh, well, everybody wasn't more. Okay, fine. You this, you acting fine. I ain't arguing with you that. That ain't my mission. So this is a professor, Sharon Ann Murphy, a PhD. You know what I mean? Professor of history at Providence. Like I got a lot of sources, man, from different professors and things when I was doing my studies. Like I got connections at Harvard, Cambridge, Oxford. Like in the basement. You back? Oh. In the basement. You need it? You need something? So okay. And so in the basement of a lot of these universities, y'all, they have crazy like Gnostic libraries. Almost like when I tell you at the Philosophical Research Society that I'm part of in LA. They have so much history. And that's why I said they study this to a T. Here it comes. So banking on slavery in the antebellum South. And this is a presentation that she did. The book ain't out yet, but I just want to give a little synopsis on it. Y'all have the document, my brother, so y'all can read it on your own. And our Temple and Page just keep phrasing, but oh well. But banking on slavery in antebellum South for presentation at the Yale University Economic History Shop, May 1st, 2017, New Haven, Connecticut. Please do not cite, quote, or circulate without the express permission of the author. So this is the thing when I talk about, they talk about on academia. When people say things hidden, I'll be like, man, please, you're not academia when these people be saying they scholars. Because a scholar know this stuff. And that's all I be saying. The scholars, we're not going to argue on how can we say peer review scholarly research. It'd be going against our cloth. Islam? So, although I was trained as an economic historian, this is what she's saying. The nature of the valuable sources mean that my work tends to be more historical than economic and more qualitative, than quantitative in nature. Research what that means. Overview of the project. Today's paper is a snapshot of my new book project, which is still in research phase. Rather than proceeding from just one chapter, I will be presiding several different portions from across the entire work.
I can have this thing read if you want me to.
Hey, if you want to.
I can have it read.
Yeah, that'd be even better, no?
There we go.
So get technical with it, no?
Banking on slavery in the antebellum South. May 1st, overview of project. Today's paper is a snapshot of my new project, which is still in the research phase. Rather than presenting from just one chapter, I will be presenting several different portions from across the entire work, some sections more polished than others. Despite the rich literature on the history of slavery, the scholarship on bank financing of slavery is quite slim. My research demonstrates that commercial banks were willing to accept slaves as collateral for loans and as a part of loans assigned over to them from a third party. Many helped underwrite the sale of slaves, using them as collateral. They were willing to sell slaves as part of foreclosure proceedings on anyone who failed to fulfill a debt contract. Commercial bank involvement with slave property occurred throughout the antebellum period and across the South. Some of the most prominent Southern banks, as well as the Second Bank of the United States, directly issued loans using slaves as collateral. This places Southern banking institutions at the heart of the buying and selling of slave property, one of the most reviled aspects of the slave system. This project will result in the first major monograph on the relationship between banking and slavery in the antebellum South.
Stop right there for a minute. Now, did y'all hear what they said?
Yep.
What did they say? What did they say?
They use slaves for collateral.
Who used slave for collateral?
The bank.
The banks. The banks. The banks. The banks.
The property can't do work.
So watch this. I'm gonna go back. I got this old book, man. And on the cover is Hitler. It's an old time magazine. Now they try to sell it for crazy dollars. I bought them all out. I sent it to my dad. And in there, a lot of people don't speak German. But in there, Hitler is speaking German and he's calling the Basford, not me or you. He's showing what he's saying. He's showing pictures. He's showing films. But in there, he's speaking German. He said, I'm just doing what the United States did. I ain't promoting nothing. I'm just saying, I'm just quoting. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand.
So when people be saying this and that and the other, you got to look at history. So when people be talking about legal, shit, yes, this was legal, but was it lawful?
That's why they had to get rid of it, because the fact of the matter is, if he did what they did, then he gonna just be just as good as they are, and they can have no competitor.
So when people be arguing over things, and I say, dude, the world, the banks, and the prisons, man, let me tell y'all systematic look when I did a whole dissertation in college, y'all, and I was doing the bail system. And a lot of these people that do this, these be no disrespect, European groups and professors and nonprofits, a lot of work that I was proud to be able to do. And we saw so many people in jail that couldn't post no change bail. And people talk about the 14th Amendment where everybody have the same rights and all this shit. And so I said, okay, let's play devil's advocate, Solomon. I don't even got to play no color game. I say me and Solomon, we both get locked up for a little bit of marijuana or whatever, right? I got 300 to get out. He don't got 300 to get out. He stay in jail. I don't. Ain't that a bitch?
Yeah. That's because the bank is involved.
I'm trying to, dude, that's bail bonds, dude. I'm gonna show y'all this document. Man, the shit is so crazy. It's just crazy. I'm telling you. And they let you pay little payments. It's like betting on black and red at the casino. You got so much money, I'm betting on black and red.
Right. It's also like what people don't really understand. You know how you used to get paid at the end of your shift, right? They used to cash you out, right?
Mm-hmm.
The money was very. They had a high value. As for today, it doesn't have a high value. You need more to do the same. You need more dollars to do the same thing that you needed less dollars to do, 20 years ago.
Yep.
But I always ask people where I work, and I was like, so who signed up for this system to where you gotta wait 15 days to get your money? When we used to get money at the end of our shift every day because you billed in cash.
Because you tree up and see Noble, see you touch it, Noble, and that's when I tell people it's like almost trading hours for dollars per se. Yes, you did. Like, man, we with that yeah.
The bank.
Yep.
But you can't make interest off your money. You got all this other bills and stuff stacking up. They like really created it this way.
Mm-hmm.
Like your bills are stacking up and still accumulating every month, right? No matter what. It's turn on like a water faucet, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they are making interest on your money because they're keeping it
Mm-hmm.
for a certain amount of time. So they're making interest on your money. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why the bank only pay you 0.0 5% of your total amount that's in the bank, but they lending your money out to other people at a higher interest rate and giving you 0.05, 0.02.
Yep. And that's what I tell people when I say, I don't tell people to be stupid with their money. I tell people, if you have $10,000 in the bank, how much interest you think you're gonna make on that 10 bands been in the bank? And so I say, if you think you're gonna make money just by putting it in the bank and saving it, that's not logical. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying you don't make money and pay your bills. And I've been telling people, listen to the specifics. I say, just having a whole bunch of money in the bank is not logical if you got a feds on your head.
Oh, you gotta rent that money out.
I will hope you sit down, Nobles, and really discuss it and really maximizing all opportunity to maximize it. That's why I tell people when they say, "Oh man, we disperse," but I say, "But we so close. All you gotta do is it's a flight. It's this," and that's why I talk about monk life. What are you going to use your money to do? Because if people want to sit up here and act like it ain't the bottom line ain't the money, they lying. So proceed. I want to get to probably by page 5, and we'll be done.
So you want us to keep start here?
Yeah.
One will set the scene, describing Southern banking, explaining how various mortgage and loan contracts work, and examining the legal issues regarding contracting, foreclosure, and the breakup of slave families. Chapter 2 will examine slave mortgages by Southern commercial banks through the 1830s, looking particularly at the role these mortgages played in the speculation leading up to the panics of 1819 and 1837. Chapter 3 will focus on the involvement of the first and second banks of the United States in slave mortgaging and the role these mortgages played in the failure of the second bank in the 1840s. Chapter 4 will examine the plantation banks, with a particular emphasis on the Citizens Bank of Louisiana. Although the Citizens Bank of Louisiana stopped payment on its bond obligations in 1842, it continued in operation until the early 20th century. During the 1840s, it actively provided mortgages on plantations and slaves without the direct sanction of the state, and by 1852, the bank was able to convince the state to revive its charter. It actively underwrote slave mortgages through the Civil War. Chapter 5 will return to the experiences of commercial banks with slave mortgaging during the 1840s and 1850s. In particular, this chapter will examine the relationships of banks with slave traders and the effects of sales on slave families. The final chapter will look at the legal and economic implications of emancipation for these mortgage contracts.
Yeah.
Introduction. During the economic boom following the War of 1812, Kentucky business partners A. Moorhead and Robert Latham increasingly found themselves in debt to the Bank of Kentucky. 1. The pair had been discounting notes at the bank for several years, and by 1817 owed the bank almost $16,000. With so many notes outstanding, the bank required the men to provide some form of collateral to protect it against the risk of continuing to renew these notes. In October of 1817, they mortgaged 20 slaves and several tracts of land to the bank as collateral for these. 1 Bank of Kentucky versus Vance's Admers, 4 Lit. 168-1823. Deaths. The mortgage deeds permitted the bank to sell the mortgaged property in case of defaulted payment. 2 years later, another man by the name of Vance endorsed a bill of exchange drawn by Moorhead and Latham for $4,500, which they would be required to pay back in 90 days. Vance, who was also worried about the risk of repayment, accepted a mortgage of 19 slaves as collateral, the same slaves which had been previously mortgaged to the Bank of Kentucky. This mortgage also permitted him to sell the slaves if the businessmen failed to pay back the debt in time. By the fall of 1819, during the height of the economic panic, Moorhead and Latham had fallen behind in all of their debt payments. Both the Bank of Kentucky and Vance decided to begin selling the mortgaged slaves in payment. Vance acted first, seizing the slaves and quickly selling one of them. The bank then obtained a court order to take possession of the slaves, immediately selling 11 more of them. Both sides sued the other for possession of the remaining slaves and for the proceeds from the already completed sales.
Is that crazy? Like, you delivered the slaves on 2 different banks. You made the banks fight over it.
Did you hear that, Malik? Yeah. Wait, did y'all hear what Noble just said? Oh, you ain't even. Hey, Noble, you ain't even got. He ain't even got to the meat and potatoes of it yet, Noble.
Boy, he was clever. Whoever what was his name? Vance. He was clever. He said he thinks it's higher robbery. Let me leverage these savings against both of these banks so I get more money.
Sales. This case highlights many of the risks faced by antebellum Americans when dealing with financial transactions, the risks to the creditor, the risks to the debtor, and in this case the risks to the slaves who were being used as collateral in these transactions. My main area of research is financial institutions and their complex relationships with their clientele. I focus on understanding why financial institutions emerged, how they were marketed to and received by the public, and what were the reciprocal relations between the institutions and the community at large. In the South, these questions inevitably interacted with slavery. Few, if any, institutions were uninfluenced by the economic and social system that dominated Southern life, and financial institutions were no exception. Life insurers had to consider whether or not they would underwrite slave lives. Banks had to consider whether or not they would provide loans for the purchase of slaves or accept slaves as loan collateral. Of course, any institution or even a whole industry could choose to decline direct participation in the slave economy, but this would have to be a conscious, deliberate decision. And as the work of many recent scholars has shown, both Northern and Southern institutions that avoided any explicit involvement in slavery were often implicated indirectly in the slave system. I am mainly interested in how formal institutions such as insurance companies and banks viewed and dealt with these risks. Thus, I am not examining the credit system writ large, but much more specifically banking institutions and those bank loans which involved slaves. As I was researching antebellum banking more generally for other projects, I was surprised to find very little secondary literature discussing the relationship between banking institutions, specifically in slavery. While numerous scholars have indirectly examined the relationship between Southern finance more generally and slavery, Joshua Rothman, Edward Baptist, Seth Rockman, John Majewski, Jonathan Levy, Sven Beckert, Gavin Wright. 2. To name a few, only a handful have approached the topic of finance and slavery head-on. For example, Caitlin Rosenthal has been studying the accounting practices of Southern plantations. 3. Bonnie Martin and Richard Kilburn have both been investigating the use of slaves in private mortgage contracts. 4. Calvin Schermerhorn examines the short but interesting life of plantation banks in the 1820s and 30s. 5. My own work has examined the underwriting of slaves by life insurers. 6. While this brief historiographical sketch is in no way complete, the scholarship on Southern finance, and particularly on the relationship between finance and slavery, is still quite slim, especially when compared with the much richer literature on all other aspects of slavery. Part of.
So, I was apologize.
Go ahead.
Everybody catch what was going on right there about the life insurance? It goes on today.
Yep.
Nobody looked at their pay stub.
Nope.
Nobody can tell you what the FDIC is. Nobody knows what that is, right?
I do.
Making you pay. It's life insurance.
Yeah.
No, but nobody knows it. But they're making you pay that life insurance, and guess who the beneficiary is? Your job. There's like a whole bunch of life insurance tied into that. And so when you get injured on a job, because it's private, insurance is private, so they don't have to post those on the books. None of that stuff they have to post on the books.
Yeah.
So all the investors invest in the company, they pull from that. So you get hurt on the job and lose a limb, or you just hurt on the job, they get paid.
No, but you spitting too many facts.
Insurance is private.
And when people talk about law, if I said, listen, most companies are private. That's why I be telling people, I give you a prime fact. Marijuana out here in Arizona is legal, right? For recreational, right? And a lot of places, right?
Right.
But, okay, so some jobs, most jobs are private. They can say, well, they still test you for marijuana if they want to, because they private.
Right.
And you be like, oh, well, marijuana, but you're going to lose.
So, I don't know if people really understand, like, when they pass these laws and vote and all that stuff like that stuff really be mattering, especially in your local area, especially for your state that you in the county. So they only like sneak these things in, and they make it seem like it's beneficial to you when it's really not. And then not only are you paying the insurance that they're going to be the beneficiary, then they make you pay for your own insurance that somebody in your family is a beneficiary of.
Man, it's so deep when I start showing y'all how stuff really set up, man. Like when we talk about the religious laws, when I talk about the Amish and the Mormons so much, because I was able to be around them and spend a lot of time with the Amish, my homeboy Khalid, and it's just a lot of things that they don't have no concerns over that the average common person will. And they come in the city, they come down, and the children hang out, they go to colleges, they just go back on their land. I mean, I know he got a little spot in the city. He like, man, I got a little apartment in the city, but he like, we stay on the land. He like, we come to the city in the weekend, go shop and do it. He like, I'm regular. I met him at GCU. I thought he was Gothic or something. I'm like, I ain't never seen no Gothic brother. You know what I mean? Out in Arizona, older brother. I'm like, man, he used to wear the big hat. I'm like, man, but he was clean though. And then he saw me with my feds on and we just clicked. We just got to talk and he was like, man, I'm gonna show you something. I'm like, what you finna show me? You know what I mean? He like, man, I'm Amish. He like, I know about Noble Drawley. And he pulled out, remember I told y'all he pulled out Peter Lambert Wilson, Sacred Drift. I said, oh yeah. I said, this is my kind of God. Boom, started showing me land, horses and shit. I was like, where? He like, up in St. John's. I said, St. John's, that's up north. I said, there ain't nothing up there. He said, oh, yes, it is. Blew my mind. Me and my wife drove up there. Huh? Yeah. They up there. They got their stuff developed now. They good. They got their trailers up there. They got their little pole barns. It's nice. It looked like a nice little, like say it like a little nice little neighborhood with like a couple different structures on it. It's beautiful. And we'll get there. But let's finish, Noble.
I'm gonna skip over all these points because we do that research.
Gratitude.
To spend 4, 5, 6. The problem is that financial history itself is a niche field, particularly outside the confines of economics departments and 20th century topics, and those that do study 18th and 19th century finance, myself included, tend to focus on northern institutions. On the other hand, Larry Schweikart's volume on Southern banking and Howard Voderhorn's work on antebellum banking throughout the United States both still have remarkably little about slavery. Point 7. This project is an attempt to look more directly at those connections between banking and slavery. The risks of slave collateral. The court case involving Moorhead and Latham is a good example of the central issues involved in slave mortgages. The main risk to the creditors, who in this case were the Bank of Kentucky and Vance, was that the debtor would fail to pay his obligation in a timely fashion. Creditors required debts to be secured with collateral to help mitigate this particular risk. But the quality of the collateral was also an issue. How easily could it be liquidated? Was it actually worth the amount for which it was mortgaged? Did it decline in value over time? Were there any other claims on this collateral? Most states dealt with this latter issue by requiring all mortgages to be registered with the city or county government. Point 8. This should have enabled Vance to check and see if the slaves offered to him as collateral had a prior claim on them. The Bank of Kentucky had indeed registered the initial mortgage with the proper authorities. However, as Moorhead and Latham continued to discount notes with the bank, these additional debts were just added onto the original mortgage using the same collateral. The bank was not required to update the mortgage debt in the official register. Thus Vance knew that the slaves had a prior lien on them from the bank, but didn't know the full value of that lien. As part of his lawsuit, 7 and 5, against the bank, Vance argued that his claims should have priority over the debts that had been added to the original mortgage but not registered. The court, however, disagreed, citing with the bank that debts could be added onto a mortgage without updating the mortgage registry. As long as the bank could prove that these particular debts predated the mortgage to Vance, then their claims took priority. The quality and liquidity of the collateral was also an issue. In theory, anything with a market value could be used as collateral. Land, crops, merchandise, stock certificates, livestock, even life insurance policies were commonly offered and accepted as debt collateral. Since slaves constituted such a large proportion of Southern wealth, it is hardly surprising that debtors offered their slaves as collateral for loans. Slaves had many advantages over land as collateral for the creditor. They were often easier to sell than land, and it was also easier to break up a group of slaves, selling only the portion necessary to meet the claims of the creditor. Thus, while the Bank of Kentucky had accepted a mix of land and slaves as collateral, they preferred to settle their claim by selling slaves. In fact, the bank had permitted Latham and Moorhead to sell off some of the mortgaged land, leaving the slaves as the main portion of the collateral. Vance's lawsuit also addressed this issue. While the bank possessed collateral in both land and slaves, Vance's entire collateral was the slaves. Thus, he argued, the bank should be required to first liquidate the land to satisfy their claims, leaving the slaves for Vance. The bank, however, argued that they should be able to liquidate the collateral in any order it chose. The remaining lands, in their opinion, were in remote places and are of little value. In the bank's view, the slaves were not only more than adequate as collateral, they were the preferred type of collateral. The court again ruled in the bank's favor. It did not matter whether or not the bank had access to another source of collateral. Since they possessed the first lien on the slaves, they were perfectly within their rights to sell the slaves first. If, upon selling the slaves, the proceeds exceeded the amount owed to the bank was to pass on the excess in payment of the debt due to Vance. Additionally, once the bank's debt was settled, they were to assign over any remaining real estate from their original mortgage for Vance to use to satisfy the remainder of his claim. This placed Vance in the position of having to deal with the hassle of selling off the less desirable lands. Although slaves were desirable as collateral, there was also a downside for creditors to relying on slaves. The market value of both land and slaves could fluctuate, particularly in economic downturns such as the Panic of 1819. Yet slaves could also lose value as individuals due to age, health, or death. Slaves were thus often offered in large groups, as was the case with the Bank of Kentucky, to reduce the risk of any individual slave losing value.
Isn't that what they do right now to mortgages? Right?
Yep.
That's
Yep.
exactly what happened to explain what mortgage is.
We do this last little part right here, man. Let's
What's that?
go ahead. Let's do this last little part, then we're in. The two more paragraphs.
Slaves could also be a problem. While a debtor could certainly sell a piece of land upon which there was a mortgage, the new owner could not remove the land from the state. The creditor could always press a legal claim against the new owner, although these legal suits against innocent third parties were not always successful. A slave, on the other hand, could be sold out of reach of the creditors. Another case involving the Second Bank of the United States demonstrates this problem. 9. Again in 1819, the Kentucky branch of the Bank of the United States had discounted a $4,700 note, payable in 60 days. When the note went unpaid, the bank sued all the endorsers of the note for payment, including a man named Venable who owned a 200-acre tract of land, another of 113 acres, and several slaves. The bank was unable to liquidate the land, for want of proper bidders, while the slaves and a portion of the land had been recently deeded to his brother-in-law, George Middenald. The bank alleged that the deeds had been made fraudulently, with the sole intent of placing these assets out of the hands of his creditors. Here then is the case of a person upon the eve of a decree being rendered against him for a large sum of money, which it is.
Hey, hold on. But did you hear what he said? She said he put it in he hurried up and transferred the land out of his name and put it in a trust to his brother to put it out of reach, right?
Yeah, you're right.
I mean that was the message in there too. That was the boom, like huh.
It's his brother-in-law. The bank alleged that the deed had been made fraudulently with the sole intent of placing these assets out of the land, out of the hands of his creditors.
Now they gotta prove it. How you gonna say I didn't prove it? He could have did it to protect his land. He could have said, "Hey man, I fell in a hard time. I knew they're gonna try to go for my land. I'm protecting myself. That ain't illegal."
No, they do it.
Come on. That's why you gotta reserve your right to defend yourself. Every contract you go in, they say all rights reserved. I don't care what you sign. I don't care if you're getting a cell phone. I guarantee you say on there all rights reserved.
Theirs do.
I bet you if you got cable, all rights reserved because they a private business.
Yeah.
So we'll stop right there, man. And like I said, we got the document. I want us to read it, man. But this stuff is it's interesting, man. For we can understand it. This is understanding how things operate and the importance of the religious laws and how we can operate. That's what it's all about, man. How we can educate. We got the right to do this. The religious laws protect us. We can educate our own. And then the beauty like Noble Malik is doing and Noble Alonzo and all of us, how we come together using technology, that's what this is for. Man, if they can have online schools to do all this and we can't do it as well, and have our educators like myself and others to push this and not take our children from public schools, we want to add value because we want our children to be a part of things. People say, oh, I'm going to take my kid and homeschool them and do what? You ain't got time to study yourself. So what you going to homeschool them? And you're not a school at home. So we got to keep our kids involved. But like the Jews do, the European Jews, they have Jewish school. They started off having after school like we do. And to the people, it's like, hey, man, we can build our facility within and compete. So I give gratitude for everybody, man. This is history. If you got children, these are topics they can talk about when they talk about Black history. We got so much information to add value to. Islam?
Islam.
Islam. Anybody got anything else?